Jataya Totravetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamritaduhe Namaha. We have a unique and a novel topic, novel new, especially for Vedanta students. This topic, expressed as the wisdom of the two arrows, perhaps is something with which not all are familiar. However, those of you who have studied some Buddhism would be familiar with this concept of two arrows. As the synopsis that we shared with everyone said, if an arrow that hits our arm causes pain, everybody agrees. Now there is a question. How many of us would invite and welcome a second arrow to come and hit the same arm? The question looks ridiculous. Who under the sun would want a second arrow to come and hit? But it is said, one fine morning, the Buddha asked this question to one of his well-known disciples, somebody who was very close to him, namely Ananda. Ananda, if an arrow hits your arm, will it pain you? And Ananda said, revered sir, it will surely pain me. And then the Buddha says, would you then want a second arrow also to hit the same arm? Ananda said, revered sir, the first arrow itself is so painful. Why would I want a second arrow to come towards my arm? The Buddha smiled and said, that's a question I also want to ask people in this world. People everywhere are inviting and welcoming a second arrow to come and pierce their flesh. He explained what is meant by the two arrows. Before I tell you the meaning, the hidden significance of the two arrows, let me share with you an actual story. There was in a certain city a lady called Kamalamma. And this Kamalamma had a 16-year-old son whose name was Umesh. And in that part of the world, when boys and girls turn 16, they can start driving, but with what is called a learning license. When they drive the car has to have a big L board in red color. And not just the board, somebody driving on the roads has to have, with that L board, has to have another older person with a full-fledged driving license by his or her side. So Umesh was thoroughly enjoying this license now. He can drive, but Kamalamma always used to sit next to him. Otherwise, the police could fine Umesh, fine Kamalamma. So, in the beginning, he was happy. So what? My mother sits next to me, I can drive, and she doesn't mind if I drive on any road, go anywhere. But as young people tend to do, after a few months, Umesh started feeling the need for total freedom. I don't want my mother to sit next to me or behind me. I want to just drive. I'm so good. And not only he, his friends also told him, Umesh, you drive so well now. Why do you need your mother? Of course, the law demands that as long as you have this learning license, somebody with a full-fledged license has to be in the car and so on. But this Saturday to the party that we have, do one thing. This Saturday, you just come by yourself. And Umesh starts pestering his mother from Wednesday itself. Amma, this Saturday I want to drive by myself. Please don't come. Kamalamma is a disciplinarian. She said, dear, I know how you want to go all by yourself, but one thing is law. Another is safety is above everything. I tell you, I will come with you, but I won't enter the place where the party will be held. I will be outside. So you go in alone, take 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. When you come out, I'll bring you back, or you drive, I'll be by your side. But I'll be with you. Umesh was very unhappy, and finally, Saturday morning, he cried his way to get finally the consent of his mother. Kamalamma said, her heart melted, Umesh, I don't know why you insist so much. All right, I'll give you the car keys. This evening, you go to the party all by yourself. But on one hand, I have confidence in your driving skills. But the Saturday evening party can sometimes go out of hand. Your friends may make you drink a little more than usual. And that is what causes tremendous fear to me. Umesh, my dear boy, for heaven's sake, don't drink more than a little bit for company. You got to drive back and you got to be very balanced. Umesh says, you have seen me, Amma. How can you distrust me? I'm going to be very firm with my friends. Either I won't drink at all, or if they force, I can just take a little, etc., etc. But the story has a tragic end. Umesh goes all alone and drives very well, but at the party, he drinks a little more, and drinks a little more again. On the way back, he doesn't know whether he is going at the right speed. He meets with a very bad accident, multiple fractures. When Kamalamma gets to know, she rushes and he is admitted. The boy is admitted at the best hospital. Well, the tragic story is not that tragic that the boy dies, but the boy, thanks to a very good doctors at that hospital, survives, doesn't die. But they say it will take 6 months to 1 year for him to be on his feet again. And it was so saddening. Just a day before, on Saturday, everything was so wonderful. Sunday morning, there is so much gloom in the house. When Kamalamma comes home to pick up a few things, with Umesh being in the hospital, she gets a phone call. And a gruffy voice says to her, Kamalamma, are you a mother or are you a murderer? Kamalamma is really so pained. Am I a mother? Am I a murderer? By giving the keys to my son who has only a learning license. I almost got him killed. Thank God he has survived, but what a treacherous, what a terrible scenario this is. The story is over, but I need to make a clarification. I said a phone call came and a gruffy voice said, are you a mother or are you a murderer? There was no phone call, my dear friends. That was not a phone call. That was her own inner voice. Her own conscience said to Kamalamma, are you a mother or are you a murderer? And not just that couple of sentences, her own mental chatter went out of limits. Her own mind said, you have always been unbalanced. You don't have emotional maturity. If you really cared for your son, you would not have at any cost permitted him to drive by himself, and so on and so forth. So much of anguish, so much of agony, so much of repentance, so much of self-rebuke, so much of self-condemnation. Now, this is called the second arrow. What physically happened is the first arrow. What the mind of you, me, her, and him, what our mind does in response to specific scenarios is the second arrow. The Buddha explained to Ananda, in this world, go watch. There is some pain in life, we understand, but for pain that is inevitable in life, there is generally so much of suffering caused by ignorance and by our own psychological responses. So when we react, we respond, we allow our mind to go berserk, go into incessant chatter. That is what is meant by our inviting and welcoming a second arrow. It is easy to say all this, but in actuality, every one of us knows. Who among all of us here listening to this lecture has not experienced all kinds of tragic events? Accidents, death, disease, somebody leaving us, somebody letting us down, somebody disappointing us in most terrible ways. Every house has some stories to say. Every ashram, every institution, every organization, every country, everywhere, life is full of what Buddha called dukkam. Buddha called sorrow or suffering as a truth of life. You have surely heard in the vast teachings of Buddhism, of which I don't claim to be very familiar. I know also just a few basics. You have heard the Buddha talked about four noble truths. Let me see whether I can show you at this time a simple slide. Oh, here it is. Give me a minute. And I come back to here. Let me share a simple slide here. Here. Can someone tell me whether the slide is visible?
Yes, Swamiji.
All right. What are the four noble truths? Pretty simple. The first truth is, if you are a human being, and all of us are human beings, nobody is an angel here. If you are a human being, the first truth of your life is there is suffering. The truth of suffering. The second noble truth that finds a place in Buddha's most fundamental teachings is every suffering has a specific cause. Find the cause of your suffering. The third truth is It's a good news. While there is suffering, while there are causes for suffering, the good news in the third noble truth is there is a solution. There is a way to end sorrow. There is a way to bring all suffering to an end. This is the good news. The first two were bad news. Everybody's life, king or pauper, beggar, men or women, people in the United States or people in Afghanistan, anywhere and everywhere. People have suffering in their life. The first and second are not good news. The third one is good news. There is a solution. I must share with you a little joke. Because amidst all our suffering, we make room for jokes anyhow. This joke I got to know just this morning. I attended a 2 hours online session on some solar electricity generation project. Solar thermal electrical generation. Sunlight is focused to provide so much heat to water going through tubes. The water turns into steam. No photovoltaic cells or those photovoltaic plates, but water turning into steam, that steam to making a turbine rotate, and that causes electricity to be generated. And Professor Sundar Rajan of IIT Madras, who presented it, shared a joke in between. He said, our technology is so impressive, we have made great strides in technology. And when we look at the achievements of modern science and technology, it makes us feel so good. That is good news, but there is a bad news, he said. And then he shared a joke. First of all, he talked about the bad news being, you may wonder, having made reference to science and technology, I must let you know, all the global warming and climate change and new forms of diseases, new kinds of human suffering, in many of which science and technology have played a role. Even coronavirus is believed to be man-made and a gift of science and technology. So in science and technology, there is good news and there is bad news. And now with the joke I'll complete my reference. I don't want to go for too much diversion. Professor Sundar Rajan of IIT Madras was the speaker. He said, a plane was going beautifully from New York to London. And halfway through, the pilot announced to all the passengers, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, I have good news for you. One good news and one bad news. So they were very eager to listen to what is the good news, what is the bad news. The pilot said, the good news is this plane is flying so well at such high speed and going so well through the sky, and it's amazing. So that's the good news. And what's the bad news now? He says somehow something has gone wrong. Though it is flying so well, we don't know where it is going. he lost the directions or some confusion. Flying so well, but we don't know where it is going. So one good news and one bad news. And the professor compared it with today's science and technology. Amazing things, but at times we wonder, all this, where is all this taking us now? Luckily, in Buddha's 4 truths, the first 2 are bad news. The third is good news. There's a solution. There's a way to end sorrow. And the 4th one says that he is implementing the right action. And that is where Buddha gave the Eightfold path. I don't know much Buddhism, nor will I try to talk more on Buddhism, but I thought it's of interest to show what the eightfold path is. Before that, another graphic, four noble truths. There is suffering, is the truth of dukkha. Whether you like it or not, from the time we are born till we die, there is dukkha for everybody. Swamis and Swaminis and Brahmacharis, Brahmacharinis and all, they also have dukkha. Nobody is spared. The second truth is samudaya, how it originates, what causes dukkha can be figured out, can be found out. The third one is nirodha. If you learn spirituality, if you learn to wisdom, you can nirodha, control and bring to end this dukkha, sorrow or suffering. The fourth one is the eightfold path. Marga of Samskrit becomes magga. Magga. So dukkha and samudaya and nirodha and magga are the four noble truths. Now the magga is eightfold path. The eightfold path is right view. In this picture, it is called correct view. More often we talk about right view, then right intention, then right speech, then right action. Then you have number 5, right livelihood. Number 6, right effort. Number 7, right concentration. And number 8 is right mindfulness. So 8 right things. And Buddhism teaches us what it is to have these 8 principles implemented in our daily life. So with this, let me conclude this simple presentation and come back to, let me see, screen sharing has stopped. Okay. So now I am fully visible. For those of you who enlarge, everyone knows how you may pin a video. If you take your mouse and pin the video, or bring that window to stage. That's how some other software says. Then of course you can see in larger size. Whatever, mainly it is important to listen. So the Buddha introduced this wonderful concept of 2 arrows. First arrow is what actually happens. No one can escape it. The second arrow is what we create because of our immaturity. Buddhism and Sanatana Dharma go hand in hand in these matters. There may be some other areas where there are differences. But as regards this teaching that it is due to spiritual ignorance that we go on adding to our suffering, if we become spiritually educated and not just filling knowledge in the head, but we train ourselves through right exercises and so on, we can bear with sorrow. As someone said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering is avoidable. Therefore, you can see the truth of it everywhere. Even in COVID-19, whatever has happened is the first arrow, but how people in different parts of the world, or even in a single family, different members, how we respond to it, how they react to it. I heard that in an analogy, a deer can run much faster than a leopard. But generally, when a leopard or a tiger chases a deer, the deer gets caught. You know why? The deer is afraid, and being afraid, the deer stops every now and then looking back. Is the tiger still behind me? And because of that mental chatter, mental response through fear, the deer, which otherwise can run faster than the tiger, falls a prey to the tiger. Now you and I also fall a prey to mental chatter in the form of jealousy, in the form of various other negativities, and we suffer. How does Sanatana Dharma, of which Vedanta is the climax, deal with this issue? In Bhagavad Gita, taking whatever happens with the least reaction has been talked of at so many places. Right in the second chapter where Sri Krishna begins his teachings, he uses the expressions such as dukkeshu anudvignamanaha, sukheshu vigataspraha. That is in Sthita Prajna Lakshanas. But before that also, he talks about dhira. A dhira bears with Shita and Ushna, with all discomforts, and Saha Amritatvaya Kalpate. So, right in the very few first verses, as he teaches Arjuna, he begins this instruction of we must learn to objectively see what has happened, an accident, a financial loss, or because of natural calamities like floods or earthquakes, our property, our house, etc., came down, or long list. Can we take note of what has happened and take a deep breath and see, now let us see what we can do. What is the right thing to do? Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payinaha anitya. They come, they go. Nothing is permanent. Tam titikshasva bharata. Bear with them, Arjuna. Yam hina vyatayantyete purusham purusharshava sama dukkha sukham dhiram saha amritatvaya kalpate natvam shochitum arhasi. There are statements, and at different chapters, the state of mind which can look at things objectively without taking things personally, without taking things to one's heart, have been talked about. All the way in the 18th chapter, I was browsing some Buddhist teachings, and somewhere it was said that the meditation that the Buddha taught empowers the sadhakas to rise above classifying something as favorable, something as unfavorable, and all that. They rise above this classification. What it meant is they welcome everything. Let anything happen. About something, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm so happy this good thing happened today. I don't go to cloud 9 just like that. And about something else, I don't take my hand to the head and go on crying whole day. You know, the first kind is called Ishta in Sanatana Dharma. What is desirable? I wanted a promotion and my boss gave double promotion. And second kind is called Anishta. I did not want to be left out in some get-together. And I came to know, first of all, I did not get invitation. And I came to know that the host said to a couple of my close friends, yes, knowingly we have not invited her and we are not going to invite her for any function here onwards at our home. What did I do? So that is Anishta, because I wanted to be invited. And I am not invited, and the announcement was made. My name is taken off their list, I believe. Gita has a verse in chapter 18, verse number 12, Anishtam ishtam mishrancha trividham karmana phalam bhavati atyaginam pretya natu sannyasinam kvachit. Sannyasa doesn't have to be in orange robes or some other external signs. When you and I, due to our anushtana, due to our bhakti, due to our sadhana, due to our kartavya nishta, through small victories day in and day out, we develop a certain strength, then we are sannyasis. Natu sannyasinam kvachit. For people who are spiritually elevated, there is nothing like Ishta, Anishta and Mishra. Everything is same. Success and failure are the same. Praise and insult are the same. If this family doesn't invite me anymore, and more families follow suit, I am no more invited to social gatherings in the town, in my living area. It pinches, it pains me a little. 2 tears may come down my cheeks. Then I just wipe them. I play Vishnu Sahasranama, listen to it. And then I say, well, if I am not invited anymore to parties in this area where I live, I guess that is why God is giving me more time. I always complained I don't have time for sadhana. Now I'm going to get a lot of time for various forms of sadhana. God, thank you. So what was Anishta 2 minutes ago now became no more Anishta. Ishta and Anishta and Mishra, etc. are all put aside. So the second arrow can be prevented by giving to ourselves the gift of this emotional maturity. And thank God, like the good news I said, the third truth of Buddha's teachings. In fact, the third truth is through developing vairagya, questioning our fanciful desires, our habitual urges, our long-standing impulses, question them, and little by little stop them, prevent them from hijacking us. Then we will be finding a way to cessation of suffering, cessation of truth. Every time we send out an invitation for our webinars, there's a wonderful gentleman, very sattvic and nice person in America, in a place called Nashville in Tennessee, much connected to the Ganesha temple there. His name is Nadipuram Srinivasan. And what he does every time we send an, he looks at the topic, and before he forwards our invitation to the next webinar, he writes quite a long elaboration. He writes an essay. And this time, he wrote an essay before sending it to probably more than 1,000 in his mailing list, telling them, go attend Fowai Forum's webinar. He wrote a whole lot of background of Buddhism, but I'm not going into all of that. Nadipuram Srinivasan's daily emails on various topics of Hinduism are very famous. They have been going on for many years. Perhaps Guinness Book of World Records should give him a place. The man who sent maximum emails on a religion, educating people through those emails. Any festival, any special occasion, anything new, anything happening around the world, he would connect it to some Hindu scripture and has something to say. about it. In fact, this email that went out, on one hand, talked about this webinar on the wisdom of the two arrows. On the other, he also talked about August 22 is Raksha Bandhan. So what is Raksha Bandhan? Rakhi, he mentioned, which is more popular in North India. And then he talks a couple of paragraphs on Upakarma. In South India, the same day when Raksha Bandhan is observed in North, in South, it is a day when those who wear a janevu, the sacred thread, change it. They go for a new sacred thread. Upakarma it is called. Rig Upakarma. Then there is a Yajur Upakarma also separately. So Nadipuram Srinivasan writes a few lines on what actually is Upakarma, what is the significance of Yajnopavita, that sacred thread that people wear, and so on. So I read through what he had to say about my topic and what he had to say about some other relevant topics, but I'm sharing just one line by him. Stress and unhappiness. He says stress and unhappiness caused by ignorance, giving rise to clinging, craving, desire, and aversion. Certain things we desire and certain things we abhor. Oh, I don't want that, and so on. These things I want, and those things I do not want. You go for a lunch somewhere, and you overhear that they have made different preparations. One of them is bitter gourd also, Karela, Hagelkai. So before even the host serves the meal, you are praying, I hope to get those couple of things. Lady's finger, okra, or some other vegetables. We love them. And for heaven's sake, I hope she won't put, the lady of the house won't put this bitter gourd on my plate. Even if she puts a small piece, and then when I say, oh, thank you, I hope she stops. I hope she won't show Indian hospitality now, etc. So your heart starts beating faster. So there you want to avoid bitter gourd, and you want more of whatever vegetables you love. So that is called desire and aversion. And N. Srinivasan says, the second arrow is nothing but the dukkha, stress and unhappiness caused by ignorance, which express in the form of clinging to comfort, craving for enjoyment, desiring certain things, and strong aversion to certain other things. In this way, our webinar tonight is nothing special really. It is codified common sense. It should be common sense really on part of every one of us, not to add fuel to the fire. When certain things go wrong, it's like something has caught fire. We should not be foolish to carry some fuel, some kerosene or petrol or some diesel, and put that on to the spot where there is already fire. Don't add fuel to the fire. Concern yourself with putting out is the right expression, putting out, extinguishing the fire which has broken out. So, second arrow is our own creation. From the time we are born till we die, we have a tendency to create a lot of misery to ourselves by ourselves, while the world, life, the external scenarios do give us a whole lot of problems. our health fails. An elderly friend of mine, some 20 years older to me, had done some wonderful contribution in the academic world. This was some years ago. And he lives in India. For the wonderful contribution he had made, he was invited to Buckingham Palace in London. And I think accommodation was organized either in the palace or in a hotel nearby. And he was to take part in a grand function where, along with a few others who would be mainly honored for his contribution, which was of a secondary nature, he would also be called, if not by the queen or one of the princes, etc., by some official holding a high position. In the grandeur of the Buckingham Palace, he was going to be awarded a certificate of appreciation. To and fro, India to London and back, airfare and hotel accommodation, this, that, all were. He was telling us proudly, I'm going, my wife and I, because they are sending 2 tickets for the couple. But 1 week before, he fell sick so badly. The doctor said, no way, leave alone flying to Europe or London. We won't permit you in this state. You want to fly to another city in India. Can't help. That is not the second arrow. That is the first arrow. When we fall sick, that is not in our control most of the times. We fall sick. One morning we get up with fever. Even things like common cold. The other day at night, 4 a.m. I got up, I was not able to breathe properly. Some allergy, finally it went away. 4 to 6, 6:30 or so, no sleep. Again and again I would try to clear my nose. You can't breathe. So this allergy and cough and cold, etc., can also be. That is not, at least we have not done anything knowingly. Maybe unknowingly we left a window open for some, we exposed ourselves to dust. Later we realized, oh, I should not have dust allergy. Like that you can see thousands of situations where sometimes unknowingly we make a mistake and pay for it. But knowingly, we haven't done anything and we find a setback in health, a terrible loss financially, so many things. That is all first arrow. Let me say this and complete my lecture. The second arrow is, if I were to later on, I slept a couple of extra hours, got up slowly, made up for the lost rest, and later on there was beautiful sunshine here, and my nose, everything got clear. Imagine if I were to sit at 11 a.m. Why did that happen? Oh my, I lost so much of time. I could have finished some pending work. Oh, if I sit down crying and waste the good hours of the day also, that is the second arrow. Don't waste another minute. Now your throat is fine, nose is fine, energy levels are fine. Take bath, do your little puja, get down and get going with your day's work. Then we are not allowing the second arrow to come near us. So this is, in a way, codified common sense, but another way, not very commonly found. You and I have to train ourselves day in and day out. We have to be alert and grab those opportunities to build emotional strength. If you have a few minutes free, do some pranayama. You have a few minutes free in the morning, and if you know some yoga, do that yoga. For heaven's sake, don't miss your yoga or walking, or there are some, everyone knows a few things. If I do them, I will be feeling better. For heaven's sake, do them. Don't be worried about quantity. As I said, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, some good activity, some good anushtana, some reading, and so on. Don't go on watching WhatsApp messages. I believe the Pakistani player with javelin throw was watching a WhatsApp messages too much in Tokyo. He came fourth or fifth. Neeraj Chopra of India got the gold, as you know, in the recent Tokyo Olympics. It came in the newspaper later. The Pakistani athlete was found to be too busy with lots of WhatsApp, videos, this and that. He did not perform well. No, you and I should not do those mistakes. We should put everything in proper place. See the WhatsApp messages at the right time. Don't spend too much time on it. Unimportant things, delete without looking more at them, and so on. Then we will succeed in rising higher in this wisdom of the two arrows. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Now please shoot arrows, or not arrows, please shoot questions or make comments freely. So here we have some chats also. Kalpana Bhatt says, I don't know how to open the link. She is so new. I guess she is the sister of Swamini Krishna Priyananda. Probably. So she has to learn. Maybe she is newly. And then Hari Om, Pranams, Pranam, Pranam. And Swami Hamsananji is here. Namaste, Swamiji. Priyamateja. Do you have this session every week? You know, we were strong at one time, we were doing every week. Now we became a little weak. So we are not doing every Sunday. We are trying to do these webinars on alternate Sundays. Alternate Sundays we do have. So next Sunday we may not have, which is going to be 29th. But 5th September, we will have a webinar either by me or by some other persons. Okay, Katyayani reminds me of the saying that between stimulus and response, there is space that gives us the power to choose our response. Choosing to be happy enriches our freedom and growth. As you said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Thank you, Swamiji, for enabling us to choose the right path, overcoming the day-to-day emotions. Oh, thank you. Yes, I had in mind that space between stimulus and response, which people like Stephen Covey had talked about, but I did not remember during the lecture. Thank you for adding that to our material today. Okay, Jyoti Varma, happy Onam to all participants and to Swamiji. Yes, happy Onam to everybody, especially those from Kerala. Okay. Anyone can speak up also by turning the microphone on. And just another 2 minutes, then we will continue.
Swamiji,
yes.
There is another story of Buddha and his disciple Anand, where reaction and responding are clarified. So when Buddha was teaching in a village, after the teaching, people would come, either ask questions or make comments. So this one time, this gentleman, he came and he started berating Buddha and calling him names and went on and on and on. And so his disciple Anand couldn't take it anymore. So he wanted to stop him. So he looks at Buddha, and Buddha doesn't say anything. Just with his hand gesture, he is asking his disciple to stay out of it. Throughout this, Buddha had looked at this gentleman with kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. The man goes on and on and on, and after a while, he runs out of his own steam. And then he leaves, and he takes with him the image of Buddha's face full of loving kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. At night, he's tossing and turning, and he keeps saying, Buddha's image full of loving kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. The next day he comes after the teaching and then he asks Buddha, remember me? And Buddha doesn't say anything. And the guy says, I don't know what came over me yesterday. I don't know you from anywhere. And I kept calling you names and I berated you. And I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Then Buddha says to the gentleman that you're not the same person who was here yesterday. And after the gentleman leaves, Buddha turns to his disciple Anand and said, yesterday I didn't want you to jump in because you would have started a karmic chain reaction with this gentleman by you jumping in and preventing him from continuing. Maybe in another lifetime, I may have done the same thing to him or someone else. So in this lifetime, when the conditions were right, it manifested. So what Buddha was doing was responding. What Anand was doing was knee-jerk reaction. He wanted to stop. How dare someone criticize my teacher who is enlightened? So I thought I would just share that story.
Wonderful. It goes so well with what we shared today. Thank you,
there is
Lataji.
another story, Swamiji, that says that Buddha was beaten up by a robber repeatedly, and he wonders why Buddha was not crying. He said he was only sorry because the robber might be tired beating him up, but he was not unhappy about himself. So that's another story similar to what Lata has explained. Yeah.
Very nice. There is, in addition to Samabhava, there is titiksha in that, being beaten and yet one remains calm. We get restless if internet doesn't work, if there's no hot water for morning bath, we get so uncomfortable. But being beaten, Ramana Maharshi also was beaten by some robbers. And next day when police came, Maharshi Ramana did not say a word, it seems. They were going, what happened? Something, nothing happened, he said, it seems. So titiksha, these Mahatmas have tremendous titiksha, ability to bear. All right, looks like people like such topics. We'll try to have more such topics that sort of connects to daily life much more than metaphysics, where we say all duality is false. You and I are one, subject, object are one, space and time are false. There is a truth beyond, and finally we say, now time for dinner, let us sit down and eat. So then you find that metaphysics is called higher, For that, nobody can dispute it, but we say we are not ready for it yet. We have some immediate problems. Both are needed. Both the wisdoms are needed. All right. So if there is no other question, happy Onam once more to all. Happy Upakarma. Happy Raksha Bandhan to one and all. Hari Om. Om Namo Bhagavate.
Hari Om, Swamiji. Namaste.